My name is Naman Sharma. I'm a technology solutions architect at Worldwide Technology, focusing on data center networking. Today, I'm going to talk about the tools which ACI provide to help you in your operations and managing this fabric. First, we are using the latest release of ACI, which is 1.2. If you log into the ACI dashboard, you will see these sub tabs. We are going to click on the Operations tab. That is where all the tools are present, which are your friend when you are troubleshooting. So I will click on Operations, and this will open the sub tabs which have these tools. So let's talk about visibility and troubleshooting. Generally, what happens in the current environment is that somebody comes to you and he says he cannot talk to that application, server, endpoint, whatever you want to call it. And immediately you're asking him his source IP address and what is the IP address of the machine he's trying to connect. And then you start looking into your drawings to understand the connectivity. If you do not have, you start drawing it on a piece of paper or napkin, and start going into the switch, looking at the MAC address table to understand on what port the MAC address is learned. Also look at the ARP table to understand the IP to MAC address mapping, all those things. And then you start doing the hop by hop discovery unless you find the complete topology from source to destination. When it comes to ACI, you have to do nothing. ACI will do that for you. It is going to build the topology on the fly for you from source to destination. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to create a new session. I will call it ping. We'll keep the same description. My source in this case is 10.1.1.2. And if you click on search, again, we have a multi-tenant environment, so the same IP address of the same virtual machine can show up in different tenants, but we are looking at the tenant S1. So I will click on that. You see, it tells you that this IP address is in which EPG, which application profile, which tenant, and what port on the leaf. So I select this, and then I go to the destination, which is in my case 10.1.1.3, and I do the search and it tells me that. So now I have defined what is my source and what is my destination. Once I have done that, I will select start. Once I do that, you will see it has built a topology on the fly for you. You can zoom in, zoom out through these icons. If you see here, in our case, both the source endpoint, which is the IP address I mentioned, and the MAC address of this source endpoint, as well as the destination endpoint, IP address, which I told you, and the MAC address, they are both running as virtual machines. It says right here. So this virtual machine adapter is connected to this. That's the endpoint on this, which is the virtual machine. And then this is the virtual machine, which is my destination. They're both, it tells you the host name also of these virtual machines and on what host this virtual machine is running. This is my host. So it gives me details to that level. And it also tells me this host is connected to what leaf switch. So in this case, it's connected to leaf 1 and then what port. It also tells me the port numbers of the leaf connecting to the spine. So now you have a complete visibility of where your source is, where your destination is, all the way to the virtual machine level. So what I will do is I'm gonna first go and see, okay, am I seeing any critical errors? I don't see any faults. It would have shown me some faults. So I don't see any faults between this source and this destination. Or in my topology overall, it will show me the faults on leaf or spine in general. So there is nothing going on, which is alarming. The next is I'm gonna click on drop and stats. So once I do that, again, it is going to show me if there is any packet getting dropped. This means no drop, this means packet dropped. So we are not dropping any packet on the spine. Now this tells us generally if spine is dropping any packet, not specific to this source and destination. Similarly, it is telling me here that this leaf is dropping the packet. So let's take a look at that. To do that, I'm gonna click on this yellow icon and it tells me my drop status. So if you see here, it says on port 1/49 I have dropped packets. So that tells me, okay, the packets have been dropped and on what ports they are getting dropped. So in this case, it's 1/49. That is not the port where our source and destination is connected. So though this leaf is dropping the packet, we can immediately find out it is not related to our source and destination. And that's how easy it is for you to understand where exactly the problem is going on. Maybe there is something else connected on port 1/49 which you can go and troubleshoot later and understand why the packet is getting dropped. So that is what shows you of packets drop or no drop. The second thing is contracts. Again, the source and destination is in a separate EPG, and between EPGs you need to know you know that there is a contract which is required. So it tells me again what is the contract which is attached to this source endpoint to the destination endpoint. I have three filters. The first is ICMP, which is right here. Then I have the SSH filter, and then I have the telnet filter. These are the three filters, so I'm allowing ICMP, SSH, and telnet between this source endpoint and destination endpoint in separate EPGs. Again, one thing to notice is that in the end, by default, there is a deny. So contract is nothing but an access control list. If there is no permit statement which matches, by default, the last statement is deny. It is what exactly like that which you see here. The third thing we will see is trace route. So if I click on this, I now can on the fly just understand what path the traffic is taking from source to destination. And in this case, because they both are connected to the same leaf, it doesn't matter because we have the same link. But again, if your destination was on a remote leaf, you have multiple paths because you have two spines and they are all equal cost multipath. So traceroute will tell you exactly what path you're taking to go to the spine. Are you sending the packet to spine 1 or spine 2, sorry, if your destination is on a remote leaf, not on the same leaf. So in this case, they are both on the same leaf, but let's take a look at it. So I'm going to select ICMP here and select the trace route option. It is going to build a trace route for us again on the fly. Pretty cool. So again, you see here, it's on the same leaf. So it is showing that, okay, it is going directly from source to destination, which is on the same leaf. It would have been different if our destination was on a different leaf. Then it would have shown us one of these two links as green, and which means I'm using that link to send the traffic. You can also span your traffic. Again, do you want to span a EPG, the whole, your destination type is endpoint group, is it host? So there are multiple options which you can select when you are doing the span. There is also atomic counters. Again, atomic counters comes into the picture when your source and destination are on separate leaf, because when the traffic comes, that's how the the atomic counters come into the play, where they calculate how many packets have left and how many packets have been received. But the source and destination has to be on a separate leaf. So if I click here, it will not work. Exactly this, like I said, atomic counter is not supported when both endpoints connect to the same set of leaf switches. So this is the, in my opinion, a lifesaver for operation people, because they get calls all the time, and as the environment gets more and more virtualized and more VMs and physical servers, it is really difficult for a administrator to understand where my endpoints are, who is talking to whom, how are they connected. ACI helps you with that because it has a complete database which has all the endpoints, whether it's physical or virtual, whether it's VMware, OpenStack, Microsoft. It has a complete database, and it uses that, and it builds a topology for you on the fly. The second tool we will talk about is capacity dashboard. Again, as ACI is multi-tenant, and as you grow your fabric and add more and more endpoints or bridge domains or EPGs or VRFs, it is important for you to understand what is the capacity, how many are supported, how many I have used, because until now there is no place where you can go and look that for that information. So these numbers of how many endpoints, bridge domains are supported is based on the release. So this 1.2 release supports these numbers. As the new and new releases comes up, these numbers will change. But it is telling me again how many endpoints I'm using, how many bridge domains I'm using out of total. So it gives you a good view of how much resources have you utilized and how much you have available right now. The third one is the ACI optimizer. Sorry. And ACI optimizer is again along the same lines, where what if somebody comes to me and says, I need to build two more tenants in my ACI, which will be completely separate environments, a dev or a ops or a prod environment or DMZ. And this is what I'm going to put on the fabric. You can actually go and simulate how much load that will put on your ACI in terms of resources, TCAM resources, and all those things. So to use that, we click on the ACI optimizer and we go to the actions and we say create optimizer config template. Again, we are not pushing any changes. We are just trying to build a topology, simulate a topology, and see if we deploy this, what resources will be consumed. So I click here. I'm gonna give this a wwt prod test. That's the name of this template. I will say submit. Double click on this. It opens up. So I'm gonna say in this, I'm gonna create a tenant. The tenant is prod tenant. So one tenant is this. Then I would say, okay, EPGs, which will be mapped to this tenant. I can say web is the EPG, or I can just, right now just say EPG, because I will put multiple EPGs. And let's say I'm going to put 5 EPGs. It will be deployed on 4 switches. We can leave this, we don't have to fill everything. All when it says red, that is what you have to fill the information. So again, bridge domain, I'm going to create a bridge domain again, so that was it knows that, okay, how many bridge domains I'm creating. So again, I say test is the bridge domain, and this will be shared by all the EPGs. So we just select based on our requirements, and then we will go and create a VRF. Again, let's say test is the name of this VRF as well. Type this. So I've selected that. How many subnets I will have? Let's say I will have 30 subnets in this bridge domain. Then I will choose the label. Again, label is just to identify that, and I say submit. Again, guesswork how many endpoints I'm assuming. So I will say I'm gonna have close to 5,000 endpoints, which means 5,000 IP for addresses. Now again, you can have non-IP endpoints as well, but I'm assuming I have all the IP endpoints here. And then subnets, like I said, 30, and I say submit. So I have 5 EPGs, and I'm gonna go and create one more tenant, which I will say DMC, and I will say submit. And let's move the EPGs here. Again, I will say EPG test. This will have 4 EPGs. Let's assume that. I'm gonna create a new bridge domain for this. I will say DMZ test. I have to create a VRF, so I would say DMZ test. This will have, suppose, 10 subnets, and I will go and create a label, or I can use the same label, it doesn't matter. For this DMZ, I'm gonna say I have assumed 3,000 endpoints. Same again, these are all IP endpoints, and I set 10 subnets. So I have said this is what it will be like, and then I'm gonna basically go and say deployment, and it is gonna tell me right here. If I zoom this a little bit, it is going to tell me again what is the resources I'm gonna utilize. If I go with 3 and 2 EPGs on these leaves, which I have talked about, again, what is the TCAM, the VLAN table size, the longest prefix match table. So again, you get a good understanding before you push something or you deploy it, and then it gets the error message and it doesn't get deployed because you end up using all the resources. Now again, keep in mind ACI is pretty scalable in terms of resources, but these are for environments which are really multi-tenant scalable environment. You would like to know my utilization before you deploy it, so this tool helps you in planning for that. Then we'll talk about the endpoint tracker. So again, somebody comes to you and say, I am not able to access my endpoint, or my endpoint is having issues. And the first thing you are like, okay, where is this endpoint? And remember, when you have a big environment, or even a decent size environment with multiple endpoints, let's assume if you have 500 machines, physical or virtual combined, it is difficult for you to know exactly where that actual endpoint is. It's very hard to have diagrams or visuals to that level of detail. Generally, it will show you a top of the rack switch, and then you don't know what is below that top of the rack switch. So you don't have that visibility. And again, if it's a virtualized environment, it adds to the layer of complexity. So here I can just go and say what is the IP address. Like in this case, my source was .2. I will use the same endpoint IP address, and I go and say search. It is telling me, again, because we have a multi-tenant environment, we are using the same IP addresses, overlapping IP addresses between the tenants, and that's the whole advantage of multi-tenancy. But in this case, it is telling me exactly this IP address, in what tenants this IP address is available. What is the application profile? What is the EPG this endpoint is mapped to? And the IP address, we have already mentioned that. You see here, like in our setup, everything is in web EPG because this is part of our lab. But in your scenario, this can be in just one tenant, or if you're using overlapping IP addresses, it can be in multiple tenants in separate EPGs, but it is going to give you that complete information. What leaf switch it is connected to what port. If you click on this, it is gonna show you the states. And what I mean by that is it will tell you again when it was attached. If it's a VM which was powered down, it will tell you it was attached or detached. If you do a vMotion, it will tell you where it was earlier and then its state has changed and now it is present at a new location. So it gives you a complete transition history of this endpoint, when it came online, when it went offline, all those things. So you have complete information of each and every endpoint. Again, it doesn't matter whether it's a physical or virtual endpoint, you have complete visibility. And that is really helpful when you have an environment where you have multiple devices doing vMotion or ping pong. The last thing is health scores. Again, when you look into this dashboard, you can quickly see that what is my health score of my switches. Is my switches having any problem? Like I see here and I say, okay, this spine has a health score of 80. What's going on? I can double click on this spine and actually go into the health. So now from a ACI fabric view, I'm going into a view of just that spine, which will have information of just that spine. And I go into the health, it is going to talk about just that spine. I see here it is showing me there is something going on with the management interface IP address because it has a score of 0, which is bringing down the collective score of spine to 80. So there's something going on with the management interface. So I go here into the topology, actually general, sorry, and I see that there is an IP address. But let's see if I can ping that. So it's 10.255.139.184. So I go to my command line and I say ping 10.255.139.184. And guess what? I'm not able to ping my IP address. So maybe that interface is down or the cable is unplugged, because of which it is showing. So again, proactively, it is telling you what is wrong in your environment. You don't have to wait for somebody to complain or something to go bad and then you find out. You are proactively knowing what is going on. If I go to a different spine just to check, I go to spine 1, which had a perfect health score. If I go to health here, it has a score of 99, so it is perfectly working fine. I can go to general here and I see it has IP address of 139.183. So let's see if that is working. I'm not seeing any issues with the management interface, so hopefully it should be working, but we will find out. And yes, there is no problem, and that's why there was no issue with that management interface and it was not showing in the health score. So again, going back, you have health score for everything. There is a health score for tenant. If I go to all tenants right here, again tenants, all tenants, I see these are the tenants which I have created. They all have a health score of 100. If there was something going on with the tenant, it would have shown me that it has a low health score, and then you can go and troubleshoot what is the reason. Is it a bad port? Is it a bad SFP? Is it a management interface not up? It is going to tell you exactly what is going on and why it doesn't have a good health score. So these are the information which it tells you if you have an application going on. So let's go to our S1 and I have an application profile right here. There is going to be a health score for that application profile. Again, I go to the tenant, application profile, S1 vApp, and I click on health. And this application is working perfectly fine. So from a big view, I can drill down to a switch, to a tenant, to an application, to an endpoint. It is very flexible. It is up to you what do you want to go and see and where you see problems. So again, somebody comes to you and say, my expense application, my Oracle application is not working properly. You can go immediately into the ACI and look into that application and look into the health score and see what's going on. Because whenever something goes wrong, the finger is pointed to the network team. So again, the goal is to give enough information to the team so that not only they can deploy it but also manage this fabric and be more proactive in handling any problems and troubleshooting when problem happens. That completes our demo. Thank you so much for watching.